What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another reaction video. Welcome back. My name is Bob Bradford. For those who don't know, appreciate you checking in. If this is your first time to the channel, thank you very much. We appreciate your support. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about Tucker Carlson. He is back. For those who don't know, or if you've been living under a rock in the political sphere, Tucker Carlson was fired by Fox News and has kind of been silent since his firing. And here we are back, episode 1 back yesterday. It posted, so we're going to go ahead and react to that, and we'll talk a little bit about it. So let me get this pulled up here, and we'll get started.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. This morning, it looks like somebody blew up the Kakhovka Dam in southern Ukraine. The rushing wall of water wiped out entire villages, destroyed a critical hydropower plant, and as of tonight, puts the largest nuclear reactor in Europe in danger of melting down. So, if this was intentional, it was not a military tactic, it was an act of terrorism. The question is, who did it? Well, let's see. The Kakhovka Dam was effectively Russian. It was built by the Russian government. It currently sits in Russian-controlled territory. The dam's reservoir supplies water to Crimea, which has been, for the last 240 years, home of the Russian Black Sea Fleet.
So this has the Nord Stream pipeline written all over it. Well, let's see where he's going.
Blowing up the dam may be bad for Ukraine, but it hurts Russia more. And for precisely that reason, the Ukrainian government has considered destroying it. In December, the Washington Post quoted a Ukrainian general saying his men had fired American-made rockets at the dam's floodgate as a test strike. So really, once the facts start coming in, it becomes much less of a mystery what might have happened to the dam. Any fair person would conclude that the Ukrainians probably blew it up.
Why isn't this on mainstream news? This is a pretty serious story. And I haven't heard a lick of this on mainstream news. Not on Fox, not on CNN, not on MSNBC, nothing.
Just as you would assume they blew up Nord Stream, the Russian natural gas pipeline, last fall. And in fact, the Ukrainians did do that, as we now know. It's not like Vladimir Putin is anxious to wage war on himself. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Cable News consumer. Vladimir Putin is exactly that sort of man, the sort of man who'd shoot himself to death in order to annoy you. We know this from the American media, which wasted no time this morning in accusing the Russians of sabotaging their own
That's all they do. All they do is
Bill
accuse
Kristol,
the Russians for everything.
The man who once told us that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11, immediately denounced Putin as a war criminal. And
I almost feel like anything goes wrong, blame the Russians. Blame the Russians. It's all the Russians' fault.
Even more savagely compared him to Donald Trump. The rest of the pundit class made similar, clearly coordinated noises. Putin did it! Putin did it! And their reasoning was simple. Putin is evil, and evil people do evil things purely for the dark joy of being evil.
Listen, Putin is an evil guy, but Putin's not stupid. You think Putin would have blown up that dam? No.
In this specific case, Putin attacked himself, which is the most evil thing you can do, and therefore perfectly in character for a man that evil. That was their explanation. No one who's paid to cover these things seemed to entertain even the possibility it could have been the Ukrainians who did it. No chance of that. Ukraine, as you may have heard, is led by a man called Zelensky. And we can say for a dead certain fact that he was not involved. He couldn't have been. Zelensky is too decent for terrorism.
Zelensky is the American martyr. The Americans are propping him up. The American government's propping him up. It's a proxy war. America's not going to go in and fight Russia, but they're going to fight Russia via Ukraine. What does that mean? They're going to fund Ukraine. They've been funding Ukraine. It's a joke.
Now, you see him on television, and it's true you might form a different impression. Sweaty and rat-like, a comedian turned oligarch, a persecutor of Christians, a friend of BlackRock. But don't believe your own eyes. Actually, Mr. Zelensky is a very good man. The best, really. As George...
And this is just a pet peeve of mine. I'm just going to call it like it is. Zelensky showing up not dressed as a professional, like showing up in a green sweatshirt or and a pair of jeans, to me is tacky. If you're meeting with world governments, dress like you are. Dress like you are. The perception he's trying to give is that he is in war. And yes, his country is in war. But leaders don't dress like that. Dress professionally. I know it's a small nitpick. You know, it's probably a stupid nitpick. I get it. But it's just, it rubs me the wrong way.
W. Bush once noted, he is our generation's Winston Churchill. Of all the people in the world, our shifty, dead-eyed Ukrainian friend in the tracksuit is uniquely incapable of blowing up a dam. He's literally a living saint, a man in whom there is no sin. That's why Lindsey Graham is so attracted to him. They're just two good people, hanging out together and being good. And like all good people, when they meet in person, they spend a lot of time talking about killing people and laughing like friends do. Here's the pair last week.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent.
Why are we gloating about killing people? I don't understand. The Russians are dying. Best money we've ever spent. Give me a fucking break. Best money we've ever spent. People are dying. People are dying. This is our government, people. These warmongers. This is what you get when you don't make right decisions. You get people who get us involved in unnecessary war. Best money we've ever spent, Lindsey Graham says. The Russians are dying. The reality is they should be talking peace. They should be talking about getting those countries together and coming up with some sort of peace treaty. Instead, these idiots are fueling they're fanning the flames. And like I said before, this is a proxy war of two superpowers. America is not directly tied to Ukraine, but they're sure as hell involved in this.
Thank you so much.
No, it's...
The Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent, Graham says. A smile spreads across his thin, quivering lips as he forms the words. He looks like a starving man contemplating a breakfast buffet.
No one should be dying.
The aroma of death has aroused Lindsey Graham. Thanks so much.
Where are our leaders?
He feels the same way. See, there's nothing dark here. Just two middle-aged guys celebrating the killing of a population. They don't seem like the kind of people who'd enjoy flooding villages or starting a famine. And in any case, who cares if they are? It's really not your business. Your job is to support Ukraine. Watch Nikki Haley, a Republican candidate for president, explain this principle on CNN.
A win for Ukraine is a win for all of us. And for them to sit there and say that this is a territorial dispute, that's just not the...
It's not our business. It's not Americans' business. I'm tired of being the policeman of the world. I'm tired of our country being the policeman of the world.
Case to say that we should stay neutral. It is in the best interest of America. It's in the best interest of our national security for Ukraine to win. We have to see this through. We have to finish it.
How is it? How? They take over Ukraine. Okay, whatever. They take over Ukraine. Then what? You didn't stop them from going into Crimea. It's a joke.
See? It's very easy to understand. It is vitally important for you to support Ukraine because it's necessary for Ukraine to be supported by you. Your support is mandatory until it's finished, whatever it is, and whatever that means. So shut up and support Ukraine or else you're in trouble. Back when they still taught logic, statements like this were known as tautologies. Something is true because it is. The more you repeat it, the truer it becomes. It's a self-reinforcing reality. There was a time when tautologies were considered illegitimate arguments, not to mention hilariously stupid.
It's like when you ask somebody what's a woman, excuse me, It's like when you ask somebody what's a woman and they can't ask you, or I'm sorry, they can't answer you, and they say a woman is a woman. Well, what is a woman? It's the same premise. Just because you say something repeatedly doesn't make it true. That's the world that we live in today.
Only dumb people talk like that. Now everybody in power talks like that. Diversity is our strength. Trans women are women. Zelensky is Churchill. It's all self-evidently true. Doesn't need an explanation, and don't ask questions. Sound familiar? Of course it does.
Tucker and I are
That's
definitely on the same
path
wavelength
they're
here.
serving us day after day in steaming, lumpy portions. By this point, it's possible that American citizens are the least informed people in the world. Your average yak herder in Tajikistan knows who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
The problem with America today is, especially the current generation of Americans, is that they still continue relying on these main forms of media. And, you know, a lot of these, you know, conglomerates like Google, YouTube, you know, and any other, and all these big tech companies, they're in cahoots with big media. So they suppress alternative news or alternative news sources. It's almost like they're forcing Americans to take part in one of these media conglomerates. It's like government subsidized media. You know what that's from? That's communism. That's what that is. Suppress all those who don't agree.
It's obvious. Does he think some skinny dude in a dress is actually a girl? Come on. That idea would never occur to him. You've got to be lied to at full volume over a period of years in order to reach conclusions like that. And of course, we have been. The media lie. They do. But mostly they just ignore the stories that matter. What's happened to the hundreds?
They have agendas. They have agendas.
Hundreds of billions of US dollars we've sent to Ukraine? No clue. Who organized those
There's no
BLM
accountability.
riots 3 years ago? No one's gotten to the bottom of that. What exactly happened on 9/11? Well, it's still classified. How did Jeffrey Epstein make all that money? How did he die? How about JFK? And so endlessly on. Not only are the media not interested in any of this,
They don't care.
They're actively hostile to anybody who is. In journalism, curiosity is the gravest crime.
Right, they're complicit.
Yesterday, for
Big media is
example, a
complicit.
former Air Force officer who worked for years in military intelligence came forward as a whistleblower to reveal that the U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human-made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft. The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced weapons systems. Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth. In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extra.
But if you watch mainstream media, they would think it's a fantasy. And if you even thought or believed that UFOs or alternative life forms existed that were not of this planet, they would make a mockery of you. They would make a mockery of you. And they leave you out to dry.
Extraterrestrial life. Now we know. In a normal country, this news would qualify as a bombshell, the story of the millennium. But in our country, it doesn't.
Nope.
The whistleblower's account ran on a technology website called The Debrief, which you've probably never heard of. The Washington Post had that story, but decided not to run it.
Of course they did.
The New York Times, meanwhile, just pretended it never happened.
Yeah.
On the front page of the New York Times website this
Trump,
morning,
Trump,
there
Trump.
were 5 stories about Ukraine,
Yep.
as well as 4 stories apiece about Donald Trump,
There you go.
trans people,
Yep.
and climate change.
The message of the week.
There was nothing at all about how an alien species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our cities. Not one word. So if you're wondering why our country seems so dysfunctional, this is a big part of the reason. Nobody knows what's happening. A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know.
We
We're
just have
allowed
to
yap
take it.
all we want about racism.
We just have to take it.
But go ahead and talk about something that really
And if you divert away from the narrative, oh boy, forget about it. The hammer's going to come down.
matters and see what happens. If you keep it
There
up,
you
they'll
go.
make you be quiet.
Yep.
Trust us.
Yeah.
That's how they
Case in
maintain
point.
control.
Look at Tucker Carlson.
When
He's
Western
case in point.
tourists first started traveling in large numbers to the Soviet Union in the early 1970s, they found that many Russians had a completely warped understanding of the United States. They thought that Americans lived in grinding poverty, in a state of perpetual race war, and were desperate to flee to the freedom and prosperity of the Eastern Bloc. They thought this because that's what they had been told. They had no way to know otherwise. The few Russians who understood what was really going on in the rest of the world had learned about it from listening to shortwave radio broadcasts, sometimes under the covers so the neighbors wouldn't hear. 50 years later, it is bewildering to consider the ironies here. We're the ones who live in ignorance now. The
We
U.S.
sure
government
do.
has managed to classify more than 1 billion so-called public documents. So at this point, we can't possibly know what our leaders are doing. We're not allowed to know. By definition, that is not a democracy. Yet it's fine with the media. Secrecy is a powerful tool of control. Stop asking how we got so rich. Here's another story about racism. Go eat each other. That's the program. That's how most of us...
It's funny, like he brings up the Epstein piece earlier in his video. We still don't know what's going on there. Like, where's the news on that? Their silence is deafening. Like, it blows my mind.
now live here in the United States, manipulated by lies, silenced by taboos. It is unhealthy and it's dehumanizing, and we're tired of it. As of today, we've come to Twitter, which we hope will be the shortwave radio under the blankets. We're told there are no gatekeepers.
And we're going to share his message. We're going to share Tucker's message. You know, and if we get stopped, we'll get stopped. But we're not going to stop fighting. We're going to keep sharing the message. No voice, no matter which side of the fence you lean on, should be silenced. None.
Here. If that turns out to be false, we'll leave. But in the meantime, we are grateful to be here. We'll be back with much more very soon.
All right, guys. So what do I think? I think that, first of all, I want to thank Tucker for coming back. We appreciate him. And, you know, we fully support him and what he's doing for America. Yeah, we live in a crazy world, folks. You know, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you know, there is the government, they're doing everything they can to keep power. And, you know, any sort of truths, excuse me, that come out, that threatens that power, they're going to squash you. So I do want to thank Tucker Carlson, for fighting the good fight. No matter what side of the fence you sit on, this is good for both sides of the aisle. I hope that, you know, there are more folks, in the political sphere who have been victims of being silenced. Come to Twitter, and I hope they thrive in that environment. And I mean that sincerely, you know, whether it's obviously Tucker Carlson, who's on the right, but even like someone like Don Lemon, who's on the left, or Chris Cuomo, you know, even, you know, Bill O'Reilly, you know, well, so any one of them. But like I said, I'm glad that Tucker's back. So if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. Tell us what you think about Tucker Carlson being back down in that description box below, and we will see you in the next one.